Hey, Jeff, let's start. So the class, what I want to talk about is like a nation of immigrants. And we're going to talk about the United States. And I want to start by saying something about the U.S. So, you can look at the U.S. and we can pick out all of the just troubling parts of the history of the United States. It's not difficult to do that, right? We talk about genocide. We talk about a transatlantic slave system. We just talk about the theft of land. And we haven't even talked about the exploitation of workers and using workers against one another. I mean, there's so many pieces of the United States history that is just really painful. And if you look into it, if you don't look into it, then obviously you can just live in a state of blissful ignorance, which is the state I wish I could live in. But at some point in time, that ended for me, and so I'm no longer able to do that. And so here I am. But you can also look at oh, good. Okay, Brian's coming on. That's cool. All right, man. So you can also look at the United States as an experiment, as an historical experiment in the building of a nation state that is really, in many ways, unprecedented in human history, modern or otherwise. For a nation to be built upon, again, never leaving aside indigenous peoples of the Americas and all the institutions that were created here that are problematic. But the fact that people from around the world could come to this land, and after so many centuries, we've only had one civil war, and is pretty remarkable. And the fact that we get along as well as we do. Now, recently, there have been some pretty deep divisions, but even then, when we explore those divisions, some aspects of them are like, okay, we're going to get through this. So it's pretty remarkable. And I'm just speaking as a sociologist who studies these kinds of things and the ways in which people get along and they operate with one another. And when I say get along, I mean like they interact with one another and they build systems and they build cultures and they assimilate to one another's cultures and they accommodate to one another's cultures and they build third cultures out of two or fourth cultures out of three that come together. It's pretty damn remarkable, I have to say. And so one thing, go to the first slide, if you would. And so this is just the U.S. recently. So this is just, say, in the past 10 years or so, a sense of where immigrants are coming from in the United States. And the size of the circle is sort of goes along with or represents the number of migrants who are coming. And so just people are coming to the U.S. from everywhere. And it's really remarkable, once again, this nation, that we are a dynamic, multicultural nation. And we always have been, because people have been coming here from all over the planet and just all over Europe, certainly. But we continue to be, and it's really fascinating, and it's cool, actually. It's cool in the sense to see how well we get along with one another. And the fact that you can look at all the racism, the prejudice, the discrimination. We can look at all those pieces that do exist. But when I look at this map, I would expect to see much more racism, much more prejudice, much more discrimination, bigotry, stereotyping based on where people are from and what they look like and so on than I see in the world today and in the United States today. I would expect to see more, and I don't see it. Again, I see a lot, but I see it, but I would expect to see more. Okay, even when I say I see a lot, I mean, it's all relative, right? What do I mean I see a lot? All you got to do is go to cosmopolitan areas where people truly are interacting with one another, and you find that people mostly, the vast majority of the time, get along quite well. So anyway, that is a thought. Okay, so for our three, don't bring folks on yet. Wait, hang on. I want to do one more piece, and then we're gonna bring folks on. So here's another piece. If you could put this that next. So one of the things that people often discuss is people in the United States often have this idea, you know, that we're the greatest nation. Wait, you can take that off actually for a second so I can just talk. I often hear people talking about how we're the greatest nation in the world. And I hear people say it, right? The greatest country in the world. But, you know, Bill said it the other day, right? But, you know, when Bill says that, he means something that's very, very different than when, I don't know, some average person from central Pennsylvania says it, I suppose. But the greatest country, and, you know, like this sense that everybody wants to come here and everybody wants to be here. And it's just, you know, of course, because this is the United States and so on. As someone who has traveled a lot in my life and talked to people, and I just don't find that to be true at all. There are lots of places people want to go. You know, when I'm in the Middle East, there are places that people in the Middle East want to go for a vacation. They don't want to come to the United States. And you know, when I'm in Europe, there are places where Europeans go. And I'm in Asia, there are people in Asia and South America and so on and so forth. It's just like the world is, it is not all about the United States. And so, but nonetheless, there are a lot of folks who want to come here. So with what these numbers represent is that Gallup decided, go ahead, you can put them back up. So Gallup decided, hey, let's try to figure out how many people in the world would permanently migrate or emigrate. Emigrate is the word. That means like out migration, like leave your country. So how many people in the world would permanently emigrate if they could, i.e. leave their homes and never come back? So permanently emigrate. And that's a big deal, right? So think about that. Like if I said, hey, you know what? You're graduating college. I got a job for you. It's like in Qatar or in the Emirates or in Norway or in Russia. And you could go there and you could take this job. It's going to pay really well. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it, but you can never go back to the United States, or you can go back for minimal vacations, but you certainly can never go back and live in the United States. Like you know, you're going to take residency in this other country, and that's how it's going to be. Like, how many of you would be like, oh yeah, I could just leave my family and my friends, everything I know, my culture, everything behind me, and just pick up and leave? Most of us wouldn't want to do that. And so what they asked people, did a sample of people all over the world. I think that like 55,000 different people were part of the study. And 750 million people in the world said, like, yeah, which is 15% of the world's population, said that, yeah, we would permanently emigrate. Now, mind you, that's 750 million. When it came down to do it, there'd be considerably less than that, I'm sure. But of those 750 million, 158 million people said, and we would choose to go to the United States. That's our top country, the United States. So 21% of the 750 million people basically are saying like, yeah, we would go to the US. That's our top choice. Now, mind you, they would pick also other places, but that is our top choice. So when we think about the whole world wants to come to the United States, actually about 160 million people want to come to the United States, but not the entire world. And so there are many more people than that who would come here for short periods of time and work. Like most people who come up without documents from Central America, from Mexico and so on, undocumented, illegally, as we say, they go back. I mean, you come here to work for a little bit and then you want to go back. You make some money, buy a plot of land, buy whatever, and you go back home, right? That's the idea. That's the vision that most people have. Just think, you know, when I travel or when I spend time living abroad, by the time I'm kind of at the end of my tenure, I want to then come back home to the US. So anyway, 21% of the total, which is, you know, that's, I don't know, that says something, right? That's not the whole world, in other words. So keep that in mind. By the way, okay, let's bring our peeps onto the screen. We have Simney, we have Emma, we have Brian, and we have, hang on, man, Nishan. All right, what's up, y'all? Is it Emma Lay or Emma? Which one do you go by?
It's Emma Lee, but I just go by Emma.
Okay, Emma Lee. All right, man. And Brian. All right, man. And Sydney. Brian, I was wondering what you look like, actually. All right, man. So we'll tell the class why I said that. All right, Sydney, man, you got to fix your light a little bit somewhere. You just like you're deeply.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're in reflection mode. Hey, so let me ask the three of you. Well, anyway, Emma, go ahead. What's your background? What's your immigration story?
So I moved here from South Africa in 2013 when I was in 7th grade.
Uh-huh. Wait, how old were you?
I was 13, 12, 13.
And you are in South Africa. What's your ancestry?
So my mom is from Zimbabwe, but she moved to South Africa for college, and that's where she met my dad.
Mm-hmm. And your dad is South African?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And Brian, wait, hang on a second. Nishan, how about you?
So for me, I'm a first generation American. So like my parents immigrated here to the United States from India. My dad came in 87 and my mom came in 95.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And are you a U.S. citizen now?
Yeah, I was born here.
Oh, that's right. Okay, got it. And Emma, are you a U.S. citizen or?
No,
resident?
not yet.
Yeah, you're a resident though.
Yes.
Yeah. And Simney, how about you?
So my mother got married to my stepfather around 2004, and he immigrated to the United States in, I think, 1997 from Guyana.
From Guyana? Okay. Hey, Nishan, do you know where Guyana is?
Yeah, it's in like the northeastern tip of South America, right?
Dude, exactly. That's because you're exactly. All right, man. But you are an American. You were born here. So I'm surprised you know that. Americans don't know anything about geography. Dude, Simney, look at Brian. What's his ancestry?
Ooh,
look at my last name, dude.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't really have a clue.
Emma, how do you pronounce? What do you think? Take a look at his face.
If I had to guess, and this is just like a complete terrible shot in the dark, I'd say Australian.
Australia, mate. All right, Emma, how do you pronounce his last name?
Uzungi, maybe.
I'm sure that's really close. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Nishan, what do you think his background is? What do you think his parents are?
Brian's? That's tough, to be quite honest.
Brian, take your glasses off.
Okay. If I had to guess, I would want to say Russian and Australian.
Russia and Australia. All right, Brian.
It's not in the dark, but
that's all right. I got you. You and Emma are you're on the Australia thing, or it was Simney, I think, maybe. Simney it was. Brian, walk us through, man. What's your background?
Yeah, I'm Middle Eastern. So my dad was born in Turkey and my mom was born in Lebanon.
There you go. Yeah. So you're really mixed, right? Hey, how do you pronounce your last name, dude?
Uzamji.
That's a Turkish name.
Yeah.
You Turks they're rocking with those Z's, man. Yeah. All right. So listen, hey, what do you all think? What do you think about what I just said about the numbers of people who would like to emigrate to the United States? Who would like to leave their home countries? First off, it's 15% of the world's population. And then the percentage of them that would like to come to the United States. Like what's your sense of that?
I think that's pretty fair because as an American, you often see a lot of times where it's like, oh, people definitely want to come here. But it's like really when you step outside of that American kind of mindset, you really understand that that's not necessarily true, especially when it comes to places like China. Like as of recently, especially with one of the videos I think you had watched this for a homework assignment, China's doing like a lot of things and that's becoming a lot more appealing, and Chinese companies are investing a lot more, having a stake a lot more in American companies. So and that's just a really large place and a very large ecosystem in that sense. So I feel like when you're saying that people want to just be in America, and like that's like the number one place for a lot of people. As soon as you really kind of step out of this sphere that America is the only place that you know, you really get a broader and grander sense that that's not really true at all.
Yeah, right. Like the idea that everybody would want to come here on vacation or whatever, right? There's a lot of awesome places. How about somebody else? What are a couple of thoughts that you have?
I think those numbers make a lot of sense because I started the trend for moving to America. Like after I moved, a couple of my friends also moved to America. So I have like friends in Texas and stuff. So.
Anybody else? Nishan, are they surprising to you?
I don't think it's that surprising just because like I feel like growing up, I remember my parents telling me how like when they were younger, they knew they wanted to come to the United States. Like younger as in like their later teens, because like they've always heard from their older relatives that there's a lot of opportunities here, and like if they wanted to achieve their dream, they could do it through the American dream. So like I'm assuming the same message was passed on to other people in other countries too that had like a bright future and want to create like a name for themselves.
Yeah, like want to come and especially like come and make money and then go back home, right? And that's not like, so y'all, that doesn't mean like they're going to make money off the United States and take it back home. It means like they're going to contribute to the economy here. They're going to work in the United States, contribute to the economy, and then go back home, right? So that's like, there's nothing wrong with that. We do that all the time. There are Americans working all over the world who are taking money from other people's economies and then bringing it back to the United States. So it's the same thing. Like it's really important because people have this idea. It's like they come here and they take from us and they don't give back. Brian, anything you would say on that? Do you have anything to add or?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised. I thought the number would be a little bit bigger. I mean, with my family, my entire family tried to like flee war. So the priority was get out. And then the second priority, almost everyone took the U.S. as like the number one spot they wanted to go to. So like I have family who just tried to get out, and I have family in like Australia, I think, like Canada. I think there's somebody in France. My aunt went to Sweden, but then slowly everybody just tried to come here. So my aunt from Sweden came here. And
wait, so when you say fleeing war, is this the Lebanese side of your family, or did you have family in Turkey and Kurdish areas?
Well, they both eventually went to Syria.
Okay, got you.
And then they got out of Syria.
Yep. Yeah. So that's actually kind of surprising. Well, it's not surprising. So a lot of times what happens with immigration is, so in case, Brian, like your family, a few people will go to one place and then they can open up certain doorways for other people to come, right? So like your family would provide temporary housing for 2 months for like some cousins or something like that, right? Whereas if someone has to go to St. Petersburg, Russia, or Madrid, Spain, and they don't know anybody, it's a lot harder. So that's why we see that people migrating in groups very often, right? So what you just described is not uncommon at all.
Yeah, my dad brought his whole side of the family over. So
were some of them refugees?
Like I don't know if we would like really label ourselves as refugees. I've never heard anyone in my family refer to themselves as a refugee.
Yeah, okay, got you.
But I guess in some way.
What class were they in back home? What
like
social
economic?
class? Yeah.
Like lower class, definitely.
Uh-huh.
Like my uncle, my dad was the only one who like went past like third grade. Like it's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, listen, that's actually fairly uncommon because that's fairly uncommon. Actually, your story is one of those kind of unique. Okay, so very cool. All right, man. So listen, y'all. Well, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go through some slides and talk about some things, and maybe let me see. I'm going to go through maybe 6 or 7 slides, and then y'all come back on and talk. So just you can watch Twitch or YouTube, whatever you're streaming at, and see some stuff. Hey, so first off. First thing, this goes back to this first slide that I want to show. This is just, and I already mentioned this, but I just want to be clear that when we're talking about immigration, first off, I don't have an agenda here. Like I'm not pro-immigration or anti-immigration. Immigration is just part of the fabric of the United States. It's part of the DNA of the United States, and you can never forget that this wasn't empty, barren land. This is this land was not owned by, but people resided here, right? And so when I think about this other photo here that I showed you this earlier in the semester, and I just want to keep it in mind, the land was sold off and given away. So Jeff, put these kind of posters were all over the United States in the 19th century, and just like giving away land here. Like this is so the immigrants who were coming here were coming, but they were coming onto somebody else's land. All right. So first, let me show you this. Next slide. This is the first. So we've always been fighting about immigration in the United States. We always have. It's always been an issue from the founding fathers, as we talk about them, 100 years before the founding fathers, people were arguing about immigration issues and who should come and who shouldn't come. And the American Party, as it was called, that kind of came together in the 1840s or so. It was the very first single issue party, and it got in the vote in the presidential election in 1856. I forget who it was, Millard Fillmore or somebody. Fillmore, there it is. But look they got 22% of the vote, and the single issue party, the single issue of this particular party was to stop all immigration, right? To stop immigration fundamentally, right? So it was like, that was the number one issue. And of course it wasn't to stop all immigration. It was just to stop immigration of the people that they didn't want to have come in. So what we see always is like people enter. So like Brian just talked about like his family coming here, or for all of you, actually, for each one of you, like the scenario is that people come and then they turn around and they're like, hey, I want to support bringing more people like me here, but I want to close the door to those other people out there. And not to say that any of you, your families are like that, but that's the common sort of thing, that groups come and they want to keep the door open for other people in their group, but close it for all the groups that they don't like in other parts of the world. So in any case, so think about this. The single issue they were fighting over in 1840s was immigration, and they got over 20% of the vote in the United States, right? So this is like, man, this is big, right? So there's always been an anti-immigrant sentiment in the U.S., right? And people trying to curtail it and so on. Okay, next slide. And so this is, these are some of these terms, right? These are like terms that Donald Trump has used. So I like kind of put these in quotes because he's just the most recent kind of person who's like kind of whooping up all of the fear and the hate. And the problem with these divisions is there's always going to be divisions around immigration issues. Like it's always going to exist. Like you can't get around that. And so it's like it's like a bee's nest, a hornet's nest. How about these murder hornets, right? The murder hornet's nest is like, it's always going to be a little bit dangerous. Like, don't stir it up. Don't make it more dangerous than what it is. Don't make it more problematic than what it is. And so this is one of these issues. It's like, don't do that, right? It's hard enough to legislate and ultimately adjudicate these issues of deciding like who's going to be allowed to come into the country and under what conditions, and how are we going to do it, and where do they live, and what do we owe them, and what do we give them to get started, and one thing after another. It's like, man, don't make it worse. And so that's the issue with that party, the American Party, by the way. It was called the Know Nothing Party. That's what it was. That was the name they gave it. So anyway, go to the next slide. This is what we see, right? Like this person here that looks like, so it's this person, this illegal immigration. It may not be against immigration per se. In all likelihood, is not against immigration if you come here legally and follow the rules and one thing after another, right? Even though people didn't follow the rules in the past, and what were the rules anyway? Come here and not steal other people's lands, whatever. But that's neither here nor there. So, but the issue is I understand how this perspective, but this person right here is not new. This person has been in the United States making these kinds of arguments for 300 plus years. And so it's, well, it wasn't the United States 300 years ago, but in this land, right? So it's just not new. And people, calling it an invasion. It was an invasion when the Southern Europeans were coming in the late 19th century, So anyway, okay, so here's some thoughts about, so my 4 volunteers, you got that, right? So just kind of keep think about any comments or questions you have that you want to add to this. So go to the next one. I want to just show you a little bit about, well, hang on. Can we just go back? Come back on the screen, actually. Let's bring it back on. What do you have? Like, what thought do you have given what I just said about immigration in the United States? Questions, thoughts, comments?
One thing that is definitely surprising to me is how long like a lot of people who are like really strong against like anti-immigration have like been around. Like I thought that was kind of like more of a recent thing that came about within the last 50 years as immigration really spiked. But to hear that that's been around for such a long time is kind of a crazy idea to me.
Yeah. And it's not just the US. It's pretty much every country in the world is having these arguments about who they're going to let in the borders. I mean, forget about like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and, Sri Lanka, all of the, but forget it. In Afghanistan, every country in the world deals with this. But yeah, this is part of the US, man. From day one, that was the argument, I know, it's surprising, right? Like, anybody else? A thought? Emma, do you have a thought or a comment or question?
I have a bit of a comment, just like a memory from high school, I guess. I was talking to this girl who was very Republican and very like pro-Trump, and she was telling me, she was like, oh, like I really think that all immigrants should be like sent home to their own countries. And I was like, I'm an immigrant, and she was like, oh, not you, you're cool. And I was like, I think you're white, but
Dude, I know, this is the thing. Like, people just don't know what they're saying. What she probably thought in her mind was illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants. See, I usually use the word undocumented because who's illegal? You know what I mean? What do you mean illegal? I'm illegal right now. According to Native Americans, I'm illegally occupying their land. So it's like, I'm illegal. So it's, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay. So I generally like to use the word undocumented. Nishan or Brian, do you have a comment or a question on any of that?
So like, I'm thinking about the slide you put on beforehand about the words Trump used towards like immigrants. And I feel like it's such a shameful way to speak about other people in general. I mean, like, they obviously have a reason to come to the United States because like they wouldn't go through such hardships to come to the United States because like who would do that? Who would put themselves through that? I feel like for someone that's being elected as the president of the United States, like a country that has such a big foot when it comes to like a big what's it called, big footprint on like geopolitical what's it called, on the whole geopolitical scale. I just feel like it's just sad to see that, right? Like I feel like talking about other people that are trying to come into your country, it sets a very bad precedent for other immigrants that want to come in later on to the United States.
Well, I agree with you. I think this is sort of some of what Bill was saying. But understand, it's not uncommon, right? Presidents, politicians, policymakers for the past 2 centuries have been using those kinds of words and much worse. Like really, I used to show late 19th century, and God, the way immigrants were depicted was just horrible, man, just really nasty. It would make those words actually kind of be lighthearted. So, and mostly different European groups, right? I mean, this is the emphasis, right? There's a lot of hatred, but you're right. Like I look at Brian, like if your parents came onto the screen and like told their story of coming here, right? And or some relatives and what happened. And then like to them, nobody would, it'd be impossible to like throw hateful words at them because I can only imagine like coming through Syria, right? Brian, do you have any comment or thought or question about that?
Yeah, I'm just afraid if I say something, I'm gonna upset someone. I don't want to. Coming
Well,
from
well, you don't. Well, you don't have to say anything that would upset. Yeah, nah, don't say. Well, just say it in a very soft, nice, kind way. And understanding, listen, that most people who are against immigration are really against undocumented or illegal immigration, and there's reasons behind that, right? It's like me. Look. Once again, as a sociology, you don't want to create a land with people who are living in the margins of society or the interstices of society, right? You want people here who are without documentation, that you can't, when they need help, you can't help them. When you need to improve the ways in which your social system delivers services to people, like you don't know how to do that and where to get. You can't have people living below, in the darkness, so to speak, right? Like in the shadows. Like, you really don't want that. And so undocumented immigration all over the world is, generally speaking, not a really good thing to have. I understand why it happens and how it happens, but in truth, it's much better to document people. And so I wouldn't say I wouldn't stand in the desert with flags and talk about bust the illegals back home and that kind of stuff. I wouldn't do that. But I think it is valuable to understand the ways in which undocumented immigration is not the way. If I were building a society, I would do everything I could to not have that as a part of it. Yeah, I would want to document people and so on. Okay, so that's me saying that. So do you have anything you would add to it?
Yeah, let me I think this would be a cool comment. So I know we had the conversation. You had the lecture about like the taxes and how, like, when we evade taxes, sometimes I don't know, it's good for one, but sometimes it hurts all. Yeah. And I recognize that, like, immigration and taxes aren't the same. I mean, this is people's lives versus money. It's not really comparable, but at the same time, it is comparable. Like, I think we all want, like, a fair system. Like a legal system, like a fair system, not legal, like a fair system. And I don't know, from some of my family members, it's just painful for them to have to wait like 8 years to come into the country when they have people waiting for them and hoping that they'll be there, and they're scared because they don't have their family. And it's really hard for them to see other people who are. It's a hard situation all around. But it's just
Dude, it's hard when you are such a willing to be hard worker, do everything you possibly do, contribute in positive ways. And you got other slackers here in the country that you want to go to that don't even vote. Like, they can't even bother to get out and vote. Like, they don't give a damn about anything, right? That would be really difficult. The other side, Brian, that I would say is most people who are really anti-immigration, anti-undocumented immigration, they've never met anybody. Really, they don't know. They don't know stories. They don't meet people. So that's part of the reason that I think people aren't a little bit more, thoughtful about it. All right, man. Okay, that was all of your comments were very cool. Okay, go back to Twitch. I'm going to say a few more things. So here's a couple thoughts about Americans, how we think about immigration. So the first thing is, do you think legal immigration is good or bad for the U.S.? And 84% of Americans say that it's good, which is like, okay, that's pretty, this was in 2018. I'm sure it's the same today. Well, it is, because that number doesn't change much year after year. Okay, that's pretty big. Next slide. How do you feel about the level of immigration into the country today, right? So this is now, when you ask a question like this is very recent. This is last summer, as you can see right there. Well, hang on, right there. So generally speaking, people's in the United States, they're thinking illegal immigration, not legal immigration, but certainly both. So, 35% are saying they're satisfied, but clearly the majority, almost 60% are saying, like, hey, I'm not really satisfied with how things are going with regard to immigration. Now, mind you, part of that is just because we're talking about it a lot. If you didn't talk about it, people wouldn't even pay attention, then they would have no idea. So people are arguing about it and making up stories. Go to the next one. in favor of building a wall on the Mexican border, 2 out of 3 Americans are saying like, nah, man. This actually has increased more. It's higher than 2 out of 3 at this stage of the game. Now, one of the reasons, and this is part of building the wall, and one of the reasons, the things that people are raising all the time about immigration, and they're linking immigration to crime, and our politicians are linking immigration to crime, especially undocumented immigrants, but really all immigrants. So when people think of immigrants, think of the families of the 4 of you. They here in the United States, we link it. Almost half of all Americans have the idea right now today that immigration leads to higher crime rates. Okay, so here I want to show you these data from this study. This is actually, I found this, and it's kind of so you might be wondering, like, okay, hang on, what does this mean? So here's what it means, right? They looked at 200 metropolitan areas, 200 cities and metropolitan areas, and they were kind of looking. They wanted to look at the rise of change since 1980. So they were looking at the crime rate since 1980 and the rise in immigration. So is there a correlation between increasing numbers of immigrants living in these areas, and these 200 areas all across the United States, including large cities and small cities? Is there an increase? When we have an increase in immigration, do we also have an increase in crime? So here we have, in the areas that they studied, these over here had fewer immigrants. So we're only interested in over here. So we have more at this axis, up above this axis here, it's more crime in the areas that had more crime. And down below the axis, right here, this line, are those particular areas that had less crime. And what we see is the vast majority of cities over in metropolitan and larger towns and small cities and large cities had, as the number of immigrants grow, crime doesn't grow. And so, it's just really interesting, right? And we see this. All I'm going to say is I don't have a bone to pick on this, but as someone who when I was doing my master's degree, I was going to go actually into immigration studies. It was really the thing that I was focusing on a lot. In fact, for 2 years, I was writing a lot and studying undocumented immigration, and really fascinated by the issue of crime. And study after study after study shows that immigrants commit less crime than naturalized citizens. And we see this across the board. And undocumented immigrants, aside from the fact that undocumented immigrants, simply by being undocumented, means they're committing a crime just by breathing, I suppose, inside the United States. But we see undocumented immigrants having the lowest level of crime, which makes sense because, you don't want to get caught and sent back.
Somebody asked on the chat, do these correlate? Sorry, I can't read. Are these considering how dramatic the crime rates have decreased nationwide since the 1980s?
Yeah, exactly. The crime rates have decreased nationwide, all over the United States since the 1980s, right? But the idea is that crime rates have gone down everywhere. All they're doing is saying, is there a correlation between increasing immigration, including, so you want to come out here and start looking at these cities out here, and we're going to see less crime. So crime's going down everywhere, but it's not going up but the argument is that crime is going up where we see immigrants, and it's not. And of course it's going down everywhere, but it's going down also everywhere, including in cities that that are experiencing a very serious rise in number of immigrants. All right, man. So next slide, really fast. 65% of Americans think that immigration is really good for society, and that it strengthens the United States. So go back. Let me come back to our team. So 65%, man. That's basically 2 out of 3 Americans say, have this idea that immigration is good. It strengthens the United States. Okay, so what do you, any questions, comments? What do you think? What do you got? By the way, I'm really digging having this conversation with you all because the 4 of you are really thoughtful. So what do you got? What did I say go ahead, Sydney?
For the most part, I think that's really true. Like from my experience in dealing like with my stepfather and his family, I can't say that I've interacted with even like one person who really has like a serious sense of malintent and just abusing the system. For the most part, people just want to live normal lives and better lives and really better themselves and their family. And kind of like Emma's point in the story that she was saying, it's like I feel like a lot of times when people want to really push this narrative that a large amount of immigrants are actively trying to hurt the US and abuse the system, I either think that one of two things is that they're really trying to push a political agenda, or they just really lack the perspective of understanding what people go through to either get here or what people go through to really just better themselves and their family.
Dude, that's actually, I like that, like putting forward just an agenda, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like people just don't, yeah, I like that, man. Wait, what was the very last thing you said?
The last thing I said was that either that or they're like, they just lack the perspective of really
yeah, exactly. Yep. They just lack a perspective, man. People just don't get it. They don't have an understanding. They don't see it. They don't talk to people. And yet when they do have friends or something that are immigrants, it's like with Emma, it's the woman who said that too, but you're an exception, right? Their friend is an exception. The immigrants who live across the street are the exception. But people have this idea that it's all these other immigrants out there and not thinking that no, all these other immigrants here in the United States are mostly like the very people that you know. You know what I mean? It's just like people everywhere. It's just like, come on, man. Somebody else. What do you, any thought? Oh, by the way, the 65%, that number that I had up there, is Americans who think that immigrants strengthen the United States. So when you hear that, the immigrants strengthen the United States, what comes to mind for you? So if I look at you and I'm like, oh yeah, you got the four of you and your families are strengthening the United States. What do you think? What do I mean by that? How do you think that that's true?
I mean, I feel like with the United States, I mean, is known to be the melting pot of the world, right? Because it's built up of people that have come all around the world and like settled down here. And I feel like immigrants strengthen the United States because it adds character to the United States. I feel like without the diverse character of the diverse cultures of people that live in the United States wouldn't really be what it is right now. I think it would be very predominant white, and like I feel like it just wouldn't have as big of a cultural impact as it does right now in terms of like in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So it's like diversity. It's what I said maybe a couple weeks ago. Diversity is strength, right? If you want to be, I think, yeah, it's when we were talking about mixed race issues, right? It's like if you want the strongest system, you want a diverse system. Yeah. Emma or Brian, any thoughts on that? You don't have to have one if you don't have one, but.
I mean, my dad came over here partly because of his company, like sponsoring him to come and move to the United States just to work. And then my mom also was able to get a job. She was a stay-at-home mom for I think since I was born. But now since my siblings and I are pretty much grown up, she has been able to get a job, which I don't think she would have been able to do in South Africa. And then also I've gotten a lot of job opportunities. So that's like strengthening the economy in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah. It just brings different skills, which we're going to talk about in a second. But Brian, did you have any thoughts on that? On the crime issue? Does that stand out for you?
I'll talk about the strengthening. So next year I was lucky enough to get the job in New York City. So I'll be working there. And honestly, one of the number one strengths of the city is I'm so excited to see the diversity. I don't know, dude, life is boring. You need something to jazz it up. I just love seeing so many different kinds of people. I want to try all the food. I want to be here. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. Dude, go live in Queens, my friend. So Queens is the most ethnically diverse, culturally diverse land mass, land area on the entire planet is in Queens, New York. The greatest diversity of humanity in any geographic area anywhere in the world is in Queens, New York. Utterly fascinating, man. It's we in this class years ago, we used to use a book on Queens, and then my wife and I spent a week there just traveling all around all the neighborhoods and stuff. Dude, awesome, man. Awesome. You can't even, there's not enough time to sample all of the things that you really could possibly sample. Yeah. What's that? Brian, you're not an international student, right? Where are you from?
I'm from PA. I was born and raised.
Yeah, where at?
Abington, Pennsylvania, like 30 minutes outside Philly.
Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah.
Wait, where year are you guys? Brian, are you graduating?
Yeah, I'm a senior.
Emma, how about you?
I'm a junior.
Yep. Nishan?
I'm a super senior.
Super, dude. Simni?
Yeah.
I'm a junior.
Cool. All right, man. Hey, all right. So listen, let me show you a couple other things. I'm sure you guys will have some stuff to say about this. So today, one of the things that we really see is that more migrants are educated. Immigrants to the United States are educated today than in the past. Definitely. And so, I'll show you this slide here that I think is really just shows it. Go to 1960. So again, that's when I was born. This is the red is postgraduate degree. That means master's or PhD, and the yellow is bachelor's degree. And if we come down here to 1960, so each one is 2.6, right? And just look at how they're both growing. So more and more postgrad degrees, immigrants who come with postgrad degrees, and immigrants who come with bachelor's degrees, to the degree to which now it's just a few years ago, it's 30% of all immigrants coming to the U.S. have college degrees. So once again, that's changing over time. And this is because we want immigrants who are educated, and we want immigrants in particular with technology skills. This is like Silicon Valley exists because of immigrants, man. Not only because of immigrants, but largely because of immigrants. So here, let me show you a couple of things. I mentioned this earlier. Go to the next slide. This is just Black immigrants, right? So 28% of Black immigrants have a college degree. And so in the US population, 31% of people in the US have a college degree. 30% of immigrants have a college degree, and 28% of Black immigrants in the United States. But it varies widely, right? So look at Nigeria, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Kenya, Ghana. But look at even when you go down and look at Haiti. Even Haiti, and this is one of the issues that Ernso, if you remember, Ernso is battling with all the time. He wants these Haitians to stay in Haiti and build up Haiti and stop getting your college degree and then traveling to the United States or somewhere else. Stay in Haiti and really build it up. But even in Haiti, where the number, the 18% of all immigrants coming from Haiti have college degrees. So you just see how that's. So here's the deal. Next slide. One of the ways in which this is really helpful is that immigrants have contributed to the United States by really building the fabric in places all over the United States, but also in places that have experienced a lot of drain of population, like in Middle America. So what this means, meaning that there are a lot of towns that lose. Here, go to the next slide, and then we're going to come back to this one. If you could. Look at Newbury, New York, man. This was a thriving city. It's about 60 miles north of New York City. This was a thriving city in New York. And look at it. It's just it's dead, man. It's just dead. There's nothing happening here, right? And there are towns all over the United States that are just they're not what they were at one point in time because, industry moved out and things changed and the economy changed and all sorts of things happened. But what's going on are immigrants are moving into these towns, and immigrants are revitalizing these thriving areas. So if we go back to that last slide, the green areas are where the foreign populations grew. The blue areas are where the native-born populations grew. The gray areas are where both populations declined. So you can see some gray in different areas. Here's gray up here. And then white areas, so everywhere else, all the white areas are where just both populations increased a little bit at the very least, right? So all these there's so many green areas that the towns that are now, how would I say, relying on immigrants to come in and build up the town, like in, Newburgh, towns like Newburgh, New York, right? And that immigrants are like revitalizing these areas, and not necessarily immigrants with college degrees, but immigrants at all levels. And so like we as a society, we benefit from that, right? When we have these towns where population just leaves, and then but it still exists and people are still living there and there's no money coming in. And so you need like a thriving population, in particular a population of younger people. So go forward to the next slide about the mushroom industry. So no, go back one. Yeah, right here. So here's the Mexican revival of small town America. This was an article that we used in class. So the mushroom industry in Southeast Pennsylvania is worth $2.7 billion to the Southeastern Pennsylvania economy. $2.7 billion, right? And the industry employs about 10,000 people, and a very large segment of that are Mexicans. And in a significant segment of the Mexican population, of the working population, are also undocumented. And there's just a way in which this is Kennett Square and the mushroom capital of the world. It's just really built this up because of this mushroom, the industry that a lot of people wouldn't want to do, man. You go work in the mushroom caves. It's brutal work. It's tough work. It's difficult work. But immigrants, because, as you all know, have an idea of this, immigrants are going to take certain jobs, man, because you have to. Like Brian, when your family, if they sponsor some of your relatives to come over here and they don't have college degrees and they're not professional and so on, they're going to work anywhere they can, including in the mushroom caves down in Kennett Square, because that's what you do, man. And so there's not I'm going to hold out for another job. And so we see these little towns in these areas all over the United States doing this. And that's why, go to the next slide, we have about 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. So this was a rally, mostly of immigrants, mostly Latinos. This was in Orlando, Florida. Many, many of them undocumented, without papers. And the reason La Migra doesn't show up and start arresting people is largely because business determines our immigration policy. Once in a while, you have somebody like a Trump that is going to come in, but even Trump isn't able to radically alter our immigration policy, even though he's saying we're going to ship all the immigrants back home. But the fact is, employers and business people, whether it's it's manufacturers or meatpacking plants or agricultural industry, they're like, dudes, you're not. We need these workers. Come on, man. You're not sending them back home. And there's a real battle for that. And so business largely determines immigration policy, not some knucklehead politicians, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, sitting behind their desks in capitals, state capitals, or in the capital of the country. And so this is why you're not going to see La Migra just showing up and arresting people and deporting them, because they're working jobs, and there's pressure. Once they start doing that, there's pressure from the business owners to say, stop, don't do it. And so we see lots of examples in the United States where different states have passed really strict laws, like in Alabama. There are a few that we have, and fairly recently, really strict laws that in Alabama was that every law enforcement, so listen to this, every law enforcement, everybody working in law enforcement, or whatever it was local police or county sheriffs or whatever it was, state police, they had an obligation that it was in the law that if they saw someone who looked like they could be a foreigner, they had to check for their identification. If they didn't have identification, they were subject to detain. They were required to detain them, and until they could verify. But that doesn't happen, right? Like here in Pennsylvania, locally, the local police don't have any power to detain somebody who is undocumented. Even if they know they're undocumented, they have no power, nor do they even make a phone call to tell Immigration and Naturalization Service, hey, I got this person here from Honduras or Mexico who doesn't have papers, come pick them up. No, it doesn't happen. So they have no power to do that. But in Alabama, they basically made every law enforcement individual a member of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. And very quickly, what happened, within 1 year, they had to rescind the law because Alabama lost something like $10 billion in revenue in the industries in which these undocumented workers were working. And so they basically said, okay, forget that. Forget we did that. Now come back, keep working, and let's keep this thing going. And so it seems like it's something like, why wouldn't we do this? Well, we don't do it because the workers are providing an important service, and largely a service that you wouldn't want to do. And some of you, I'd love to have someone jump on the screen who's ever worked, if anybody's ever worked down in Kennett Square in the mushroom industry, in those mushroom caves. I'd love to hear what you have to say if you want to jump on Zoom. Anyway, but okay, come back on. If you could, thank you very much. Hey, so what do you think about this idea of immigrants really being important to the United States, especially in communities that are experiencing population decline and needing a revitalization, and immigrants are doing that across the U.S.? Anybody? What do you see?
I can't necessarily speak on the sense of like doing that type of work in places where the population is declining, but I can definitely really speak on where immigrants kind of like feel like kind of are like a missing piece in an ecosystem of like a workplace. Like, for example, my stepfather, he was working at Metro, and what would happen was, at the time, I think it was like early 2000, there was like a really large void of like a need for like busboys and people who would do that kind of work. And like, he was documented, but he also worked with a lot of people who were undocumented. But like, as the years go on, like more and more immigrants would fill that role, and like they kind of started to unionize and really make that whole job system really like flourish, and they were getting the rights that they needed, and like they were getting paid more. And it's like, as soon as like a lot of other people started to really see that the job was like had a lot more opportunity than people originally realized, that's when everybody decided to say, hey, this is a problem. Most of these people are undocumented anyway. Like, they're unionizing, like this isn't good. So I just think that's really interesting how a lot of Americans who didn't want that job initially now see that job and they're like, well, I can't get it. And it's like, you just weren't there. You didn't want it at first.
Right. You didn't do it. You didn't organize. You didn't come together. You didn't organize. You didn't work. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't have a vision. Mind you, immigrants, by and large, people who emigrate from a society, they're generally speaking not the lazy people. The lazy people are back home. They can't even figure out how to pack their bags. You know what I mean? Let alone figure out how to get to another country legally or illegally. So mostly what you find with immigrants are people that are really willing to do what they need to do. But anybody else have any thoughts on any of that came up?
I mean, kind of going off of what Simney said, like, I've heard a lot of people be like, oh my gosh, they're stealing our jobs. And it's like, not really, because you didn't like work those jobs in the first place. Like, the jobs that people don't want to work. So people moving over here see those jobs and they see that as an opportunity. Yeah, like in the Alabama piece, I used to, in this class, I showed this video with this farmer who they were interviewing this person after the state legislature passed the law. So all the undocumented workers left, and he said, so I first thing I did was I raised my wage price for my wages, which was decent anyway, but I raised it to bring all these Americans in. But farmer can't just raise their wages to like $20 an hour, because farming has a very thin margin of profit, right? So, but he did, to bring the Americans in, and only one person. So he hired like 100 people, 100 people. 100 people is the number of people he hired. One of them was still working after 1 week. Everybody else quit. Even though they didn't have a job, they didn't quit for other jobs. They quit just because they couldn't do the work. So yeah, it was a great video. I should continue to show that because it was really funny, but it's also depressing. Nishan or Brian, do you have any thoughts on any of that I talked about with?
Yeah, I mean, like, just going off of what Emma and Simney said, like, I know, like, around here, like, my family likes to like shop out and stuff a lot. And like, I noticed that whenever we go to like supermarkets or like local supermarkets, we see that the people that end up working all those hard hours and do all the hard labor are typically immigrants, right? And like out of the past like 20 years I've been shopping at these supermarkets, I've yet to see someone that's like a United States citizen, like doing all the hard work and like waking up at like 5 a.m. and leaving the shop at 10. Because like I feel like immigrants are the ones that need to work hard and are doing whatever it takes to pave a path for themselves and their family in the United States, right? So I feel like whenever I see that, it's kind of like motivating, kind of like I kind of use that as an example whenever people say that immigration should be reduced and yada yada yada, because like I see firsthand what these immigrants do and like the purpose they have in our society, because they're not leeching off anybody. They're just trying to help out and, like I said, do whatever it takes for them to like pave a path for themselves and their family.
And send money back home also.
Yeah.
Help other people. Like, you know what, and all of you probably have that. I'm sure, Nishang, your family, clearly your parents send money back to India, right?
Yeah, so like not more now because like a lot of my family's moved over, but like when my grandma was young and when my uncles and my dad were still like in like their 20s and working hard, like a lot of the time they would make some money, allocate enough to pay off their college bills and like live like a very bare minimum life, and whichever extra money they had in the back so that they can like support their relatives' education and their like careers.
Yeah.
So in the hopes that one day they could come to the United States and establish themselves too.
Yeah.
It was not like money that were wasted. It was always used in like the most like efficient way possible to build their careers and build their lives.
Yep. Yeah. Hey. Yep. Exactly. So listen, I want to be really clear. It's not that native-born Americans are lazy and don't want to work, et cetera, right? It's just that if you're native-born, you're gonna be a little less likely, and it depends on what class you're from, it depends on the job, it depends on a million things. But it's like, man, when you don't have to work 12 and 14 hours a day, it's harder to do that day after day after day after day. And so but an immigrant, especially someone who's undocumented, but an immigrant who's like living on that razor thin line between survival and moving forward and bettering the life, it's like is much more likely to just put those hours in because you just have to and you don't have a choice. It's survival. It's kind of like, people who never knew how to swim, but it's either you drown or you move your body and figure out how to swim. And a lot of people, they just figure it out, Other people, they drown. But Brian, do you have any comments?
I can so I can't really relate to the fact of like hard labor because none of my family really has done hard labor or like does hard labor. But what I can say is we have 3 businesses in my family, like my extended family, right? We have a jewelry store. The 2 immigrant brothers own a shoe repair shop and a tailoring store. We have everyone else has a college degree except for one, but her husband is a chemical engineer, so she's stayed home. We have my cousin's immigrant husband is a doctor. My dad has his doctorate.
Yeah.
So like, the jobs are not very easily replaceable. Like, we all have like high level of education. Education is very, very valued in my family.
Yeah, dude. I would say that, especially on both the Turkish side, but especially the Lebanese side. I know like the vision on education. Hey, well, let me throw this out to you. So one of the things that let me see how you would respond to this. People argue that that immigrants don't assimilate and they don't learn the language and they don't one thing after another, right? But the data are showing that immigrants today, compared to 50 years, 100 years, 150 years in the past, that immigrants today learn English faster than they did in the past. They assimilate faster than they did in the past. They have lower crime rates, which we've already established, than the native-born population, and they're healthier than the native-born population until they live here for a certain amount of time, and then they start taking out all the terrible eating habits of the Americans. But before that, like Nishan, like your mom, all of your parents are more likely to make meals as opposed to like go out. Like you just do. You're going to eat more natural food. And so anyway, the fact that immigrants are actually more likely or assimilating more quickly and adapting more quickly than in the past, by far and away, is something that we don't talk about today. So do y'all, anybody have a comment on that? Is that surprising to you, or is that?
It's so funny you say that, I think, because if there's one aspect where I think that that's really true, it's cuisine. So, for example, my stepfather and actually a lot of my international friends, and something that I've kind of like peeped like throughout the years, is that they have a very distinct sense of like taste when it comes to like certain sweet things. Like, for example, like with Americans, like we kind of really grew up on like a lot of processed sweets, like high fructose corn syrup and like processed things like that. So what'll happen is that they'll come here and they'll taste a lot of the sweet stuff and it just doesn't appeal to them like at all. Like the sweeteners that they're used to are very natural, and to kind of come here and taste certain things like that, it's very, very different. But I think the process of assimilation is something very similar to natural selection, in the sense that you have all of these things that just don't really appeal to you at first. And then you find out of those 1 million things that don't appeal to you, that 1 or 2 things that do appeal to you. And then like it just kind of spreads like wildfire. Like,
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Like
that's cool.
For example, like my stepfather, when he was kind of coming here, that he was kind of having that same thing, and his mother would consistently like make curry for him as like dinner. But like for like sweets and stuff, one thing that he ended up picking up really hard was like Oreos, and like he's been eating them ever since, because like the taste to him is like, it's like right in the middle of like what an American would eat, and like as like a sweetener, and like kind of what he's really.
And Oreos are just chemicals, man. You know what I mean? And they do this right here. Boom. Emma, you were shaking your head at some point. What?
That was like the first thing I noticed when I moved here. Like food just did not taste the same. It took me a long time to get used to the food. And even now, like I'll taste something, I'll be like, what is this? Like it just doesn't taste the same. Like some sweet stuff, but mostly meat as well. Like I remember we had chicken here for the first time, and I was like, this tastes like nothing. Why does it not have like?
It's factory farm chicken, man. People don't. A lot of people in the U.S. A lot of people just don't. They don't ever taste food that's not processed food, and so they don't get that.
Yeah, people just haven't had anything better before, so they're like used to that norm.
Yeah. So, Nishan, do you have any thoughts on this idea that immigrants are assimilating faster? And whether it's the Indian communities or Mexican communities, doesn't matter. It's like faster than it was in the past. People are becoming Americanized more quickly.
So
is that surprising?
It depends on where you live in the United States. Like, so I live in New Jersey, right? And like, as you know, New Jersey is a very heavy Indian population. And like, my neighborhood is predominantly Indian, which is not, you don't see that too often in the United States, right?
Yeah.
So no, like, fortunately for me, like my parents, they lived in New York and stuff. So like they got the chance to meet other cultures and whatnot. But like, I could definitely see them not assimilating as fast as other parents of mine or other friends' parents of mine they're Indian and lived in like Pennsylvania or like in like more like predominantly white areas. Just because like they were never really forced to get out of their comfort zone in that sense, right? Like, just because like their neighbors speaking the same language as them, they're not really forced to like refine their English, or they're not forced to like watch like American sports, like watch American cinema, right? Because like they can what's it called? They can mesh well with the people next to them based on the interests that they've had since they grew up, if that makes sense.
Dude, so what you just described is the immigration that was the common typical immigration for the first 150 years of the United States, where people came in groups, they came in waves, they hung out with other people from their culture back home. You know, at the turn of around 1900, there were something like 500 or 600 newspapers, foreign language newspapers in New York City alone. And the population size was a fraction of what it is today. And so people could hang out in these enclaves like you're talking about now in the Indian community. So
at the same
not much for like, go ahead. We only have about a minute left, so go ahead.
I was gonna say that at the same time though, like when me and my sister grew up in New Jersey and like we met other people from different cultures, by us growing up in the United States, we're able to like adopt American culture, and we're able to pass that on to our parents too.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Whereas like Brian while there's a decent sized Lebanese community in different areas, there aren't any Turkish communities or is there a Turkish community anywhere in the U.S.? Like I don't really like little Istanbul.
I don't know. They kind of just take over whatever is like Lebanese, Syrian, whatever that's there. They gravitate.
Yeah, so you will have these little Beiruts, and like in LA, there's like a 3 or 4 block area. You sort of have, but all right. So listen, y'all. Hey, I don't know if any of you applied to be facilitators, but Nishan, you're a super senior, and Brian, you'll be graduating. But Emma and Simney, or anybody else who's watching, if you haven't, we're doing our final facilitator tryouts. So, hey, thanks you all for coming on. Really appreciate it. Awesome conversation. I loved everything y'all had to say. It was very, very cool. Really smart, really thoughtful. I really appreciated it. So, thanks. Yeah, awesome, man. Anyway, I guess I'm gonna talk to Lily. And anyway, here's the page. So social19.org/tryouts. We're kind of at the tail end, and we'll need some folks for the stream team. In particular, if you edit video, we're gonna be rocking and rolling. We need some editors. So
stream team is fun.
Hey,
I agree.
I don't know what we're gonna do next class. We were gonna do China, but we're not gonna do China. We're gonna hold that off. So I think we might bring Bassem next class. So, all right, y'all. Thank you, and we will see you in a couple days. Be well, be safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, don't touch your face.
Thanks, Sam.